Alright, so JJK just dropped that fucking peak episode, Yuta versus Sendai. And so, fully honest, I heard some slander was coming from Brokeron again about Hakari versus Sendai. I didn't even bother watching the video yet. But basically thought, because I'm in the middle of making a Hakari versus Ryu right now. But I do want to talk about how Hakari could handle Sendai. I'm not saying exactly he would do what I'm going to explain probably in this video, but it's a possibility. And but yeah, so I'm working on Hakari versus Ryu right now, which is taking a little minute. But so we're gonna just see how Hakari could handle Sendai and if he could come out on top. But I'm gonna have Hakari roughly follow the same trajectory that Yuta did and see how that plays out. So obviously starting off, we have fucking Druve here who gets low diffed by base Yuta with no Rika. So I think it's fair that Hakari could either just he could kill Druve or just use him as a quick method to get a jackpot real quick before venturing off to fight the other people. I'd assume they both already, I'm assuming Yuta at this moment already knew that, already knew the other players in the colony and Uro and Ryu and all that, and like, he's aware of them. So I guess it would make the most sense for, maybe not. Hakari could either use this moment or later on when Yuta starts fighting Kurourushi to get into jackpot before facing, because I think that's probably really important before he goes and faces really any other fucking Uro or fucking Ryu. But so let's go ahead. So after that moment, we can assume that Hakari would take out Druve. Considering he did use Charles, he did beat up Charles before going to fight Kashimo, it'd make the most sense for Hakari to face Druve, go into jackpot mode real quick, beat up Druve, and then he would come down here, which I'm not sure how much Hakari would engage with the civilians like that, especially being on a time limit, but I'd assume he could go for Kurourushi considering... Or Kurourushi might go after him considering he just killed Druve, who I think Druve was keeping Kurourushi in check. So he'd be in jackpot at this point and he'd have to face Kurourushi, which would be, I think much would be a pretty bad matchup for Kurourushi just because at this point, Hakari is pretty much just radiating fucking RCT. So if it comes down to a situation where they're facing off on V1, let me see if I can find the situation. I think Hakari would have the most trouble facing the Swarm. But with jackpot, it's really not going to be that big of a problem. And then also, I think just with Hakari's output, he could essentially do the same shit here with just the force of his punches and blows. And considering the damage you saw him do to that one Curse Spirit in the Kashimo fight, I think this won't be that big of a problem. Or at least just the Swarm until he deals with Kurourushi straight 1v1. Also, I think attacks with this would just instantly be nulled by jackpot. Really not going to do much. So in this situation, I think, Hakari I think he's just going to brutalize Kurourushi. In this type of situation, chase down, just jackpot Hakari facing down Kurourushi. It's going to be chase down, Bwop. He's going to be handing out fucking McChickens, man. He's going to be handing out biscuits, no drinks, just bodying Kurourushi, I think. Now, I do think he would have to prioritize taking out Kurourushi as soon as possible. I do think if, for example, if Yuta was at full power here with Rika, or if he had I think if Yuta was at full power, so I think if it's either Hakari and Jackpot or Yuta at full power with Rika, I really don't think Kurourushi lasts that long. I do think Kuroushi's strong, but just not that strong. So honestly, I think a few interactions with Hakari, with Kurourushi, with just allowing straight punches 1v1 to Kuroushi's is going to be exercised. Because I think that's something people underrate about Hakari, is that I think if he interacts with Cursed Spirits and Jackpot, I think he's just going to be Cursed Spirit repellent because he naturally just has a balance of RC and CE in his body at all times. So it is going to be what it is. So at this moment, if Hakari takes out Kurourushi, assuming Uro basically does the same thing here, probably does the RCT shit. So Uro could potentially catch Hakari off guard here. And I think pretty much the same thing happens here. But I think the difference would be that Hakari would just be more aggressive in this hand-to-hand exchange. I think Yuta's considerably mentally holding back his lethality in this early sections with fighting Uro. And I'm not sure how long it would take in between for Hakari to fight Druve, get to jackpot, beat Kurourushi. But I think within this moment, it's just getting to the point where the jackpot's starting to run out of time. I think this would be an ideal situation to go into to use a domain and to go into jackpot again. Because it's a good little minute of just them interacting. And if this is just Hakari, he would just be fighting 1v1. And now this is the moment where it could get potentially, it could get potentially dicey. So this would rely on how the situation goes. So if Hakari has enough jackpot to last his fight with Uro before Ryu gets involved, what could happen is that this would basically play out very similar, but it would just be in the middle of, it would just be in the middle of Hakari and Uro fighting. All right. So with Ryu attacking here, it puts Hakari in a position to where he's gonna have to pick between either continuing to go after Uro or going after Ryu, which he could actually in a situation low key. Let me see how else it goes down. Here's what I'll say. If Hakari notices Uro shifting her attention to Ryu, I think it'd make the most sense for him to just let her do her thing, let her go after him. Because here's what can happen, right? If it's a situation where he lets Uro get close to Ryu and then they're fighting, it's easier for him to be able to go into there and do his domain expansion, redo the jackpot, and he doesn't have to worry about either one of them potentially attacking outside the domain. But also there is another thing for that as well. So if it's a situation where he's having to 1v1 Uro, and let's just say, for example, he's aware, let's say he's fighting either one of them and he's aware of one of them being around, what Hakari can do is switch the coordinates of his domain so that it's out of the way, and potentially it may be more hidden than it would have been before, so then he can do his thing and it wouldn't really be in the way. Which that's a thing to where I think people don't realize. I'll try to bring it up like it's a weakness. If Hakari's in a battle royale and he's like, he has to do like his domain, but there's somebody outside the domain, he could just move where his domain is to where it's not reachable. I don't know, man. People would just be delusional. But so at this point, if we just assume it does the same thing, he goes after Ryu here, which then they would both be boxing. I think maybe around the same thing would happen. I'm not sure about Ryu, where Uro would be in the situation. I think this would be, oh my god, this would be such a cool ass interaction if Kari and Ryu got to have this conversation. Oh my god, that shit's peak. But so if he's in jackpot, he could just be going back and forth at this point. I think it's just something interesting to mention. If at any point in this fight, Hakari needs to go back into using jackpot, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal as some people make it out to be. Ryu's going to fucking snipe the domain to destroy it. I don't even think, if it's a situation where Ryu knows what the domain does, I don't even think he would sneak attack it like that. I think he would honor the domain to let Hakari, if he's fighting like Earl, for example, I think Ryu would just let Hakari just beat up Uro, get her out the way so then they can just 1v1. Why insert yourself into that if he doesn't have to? The only reason why he went after Uro that other time was just because she was beating up Yuta, tag teaming him with Yuta fighting Ryu, and that pissed Ryu off because, yo, you're beating up on the guy I want to fight, so I'm going to attack Uro there, which is different than if Hakari's fighting. If realistically, Hakari's going to be the more interesting person for Ryu, so why would he interrupt Hakari's domain expansion to fight Uro? Even if he does or doesn't know what it does, why would he interrupt that? I'm saying that wouldn't make any more sense. That'd make more sense for like maybe Uro, or Kurourushi would 100% do that. Uro, maybe, I'd say maybe 50-50. I'd say Ryu 70-30, 70% he wouldn't do that. Uro 50-50. Kurourushi is 100% he would do that. But that's later on. But so if they're just going back and forth here, actually let me see here. Well, this moment here, he attacks Uro because he wants to fight Yuta. That's the most interesting fight to him. Uro isn't exactly the most interesting fight to Ryu, just because she's not really a power person. She's a more of a manipulator. She's still strong on her own, don't get me wrong. But so at this moment right here, if they're just going at it, at any moment, if they're doing a 3v1, it's like battle royale, 1v1v1, as long as Hakari's in ranges with both of them, he can do his domain expansion whenever he needs to. Now the problem gets to where if, well, so in this situation, for example, if he's in jackpot, he's gonna be deadbolt. He's really gonna be fine in this situation, just because this will just go down differently because I think that's what people don't realize. If it's a situation where Hakari's in this situation, when there's moments when Yuta's being 2v1'd, it wouldn't go down the same way because it's a different person in that situation. Like, he wouldn't engage with Uro the same way to where he would get that violent reaction out of her like Yuta did, because that just wouldn't happen. In a situation, there wouldn't really be a point for Ryu to also attack Hakari at this point if he's fighting Uro. He would just go in there and just fight either one of them. I think it would just be like 50-50. And I think people who are assuming he would do either one just don't really know what they're talking about. So I feel like it really comes down to, this is like the most imperative moment of the fight if it were to happen. So let's think. I have to really, so there's gonna be two situations where this happens, right? So Hakari might be fucked in this situation. So let's think. So here's the thing: if Hakari's already in jackpot and he can't open his domain yet here, because that's also a thing. If he's in jackpot, he can't open his domain. So if he's in a situation here and they both do domain expansion, he's in jackpot. Honestly, I think he'd be fine, because then their two sure hits would clash, and I don't think they would target him at all, just because they would probably negate each other, assuming they have relative refinement for the domains. So then Hakari would just be in there and jackpot. I think he would heal from most. I don't anticipate either one of them having like a sure hit that's capable of fucking one-shotting Hakari. I just don't think that's happening. So this is just where it gets complicated. All right, so let's see. So obviously in the situation, Rika wouldn't be a factor. Now Kurourushi here, if this, so there's two timelines in this, right? If this happens and Hakari's already in jackpot and he can't do domain expansion, and Kurourushi does the same thing, and it somehow all collapses. Hakari's in the perfect position possible, and it doesn't matter. He is fine, all right? If he wasn't in, what's it called? If he wasn't in jackpot, or this happened right at the end of a round, and he goes into domain expansion, right? He might be fucked. I'm not 100% sure. I can't say for 100% certainly either way, but he might be fucked. So if it's a situation where he opens his domain expansion, right? Kurourushi comes in. Okay, so this is where it just gets complicated. There's too many factors. So let me check to see. Because from what we can see, the domain settles enough to where it's fully formed. So there's a small possibility Hakari could get a jackpot within the time like this happened. If he hits that hidden probability jackpot he got against Kashimo when he almost got killed towards the end of the fight, if he gets that, then he's gonna be golden, and then it wouldn't matter regardless, right? He'd already be in jackpot, and the domain would collapse, and Kurourushi would be. There's three ways this happens, right? Way one, Hakari's already in jackpot when all this goes down. The domain clash, Kurourushi interrupting it breaking or collapsing or whatever. So if he's already in jackpot, he's fine. If he opens his domain, he could get a hidden probability and then also get a jackpot, and that situation would be fine. The only way he's not fine is if he's not in jackpot, has to participate in the domain clash, and it gets interrupted, and he is now in burnout, and he has to fight for them. That way he would 100% be fucked. But let's see. So that's also just another thing. I have no idea how long his burnout is, or if he has enough curse energy to open a domain expansion multiple times regardless. But I think it's possible, but I'm just not sure. So if it's in this situation, I don't even know. I think it's fair to assume Hakari would have the same IQ here. I think he could come to the same realization if he's in the situation. She has to fight Kurourushi. She get her armor moved. Damn. So if he takes her out, and then it's just, so there's two options I see. If Hakari's still capable of doing his jackpot, because if it goes into, option A is he's already in jackpot. Option B is he opens his domain, gets an instant jackpot. Option C is he domain collapses, now he's in base having to fight Ryu post domain expansion. And yeah, so okay, so it's either option A or B. I see Hakari winning. He go to jackpot. I think at this point he could bully Ryu, who's post domain expansion, technically still in burnout, but he can still sort of perform his technique. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Let me see. I think it says it here somewhere. Did it? But yeah, so obviously beam clash with him, which is what he wants. But I think at this point, if Hakari's still in jackpot, I think at this point he's just gonna bully Ryu. And then, well, let me go back to the last chapter. So if he's still in jackpot, he can one-shot Kurourushi. I mean, he might still be able to put down Kurourushi. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know. I'm not too sure on that one. If it's Hakari, I mean, yeah, Kurourushi, 1v1 Ryu, and then I got Hakari at that point. If it's option C, where Hakari has to do the domain clash, loses because of Kurourushi interrupting the domain, I think if he has to 1v1 Ryu and it's just base Hakari, I think he would probably lose. So I guess actually it's like 4 different. So either it is shit. Let me see. Option A, already in jackpot. Option B, opens the domain, gets an instant jackpot. Option C, he has to clash, loses, and then he's in burnout in base. Option D is that he just retreats, doesn't even take the chance of the domain clash, and then just like comes back around and them afterwards. But yeah, so I think that's how Hakari could handle Sendai. He obviously has paths to win. I mean, this isn't like showdown, but definitely possibilities Hakari could lose. He's not that broken to where he's like, you know, infallible. But this would probably be a more difficult fight than Kashimo, just because of how many like different factors have to be like incorporated into the fight. Yeah, that's just my thoughts.